On February 24th, 2022, over 100,000 soldiers and columns of armor crossed into Ukraine. Airfields struck, cities besieged, borders redrawn. The largest invasion on European soil since the Second World War. The real shockwave didn't stop at the border. It hit the global breakfast table. In the weeks that followed, the global price of wheat spiked to an all-time high. Egypt, the world's largest wheat importer, scrambled to find billions to subsidize bread before bread riots broke out. In Indonesia, street vendors ran out of cooking oil. In Germany, heavy chemical plants cut production as energy prices went vertical. In Taiwan and South Korea, semiconductor plants held their breath because half of the world's chip-grade neon gas was produced in 2 factories in Ukraine, right in the line of fire. Every silo was full. Millions of tons of grain were sitting ready, worth billions of dollars, and none of it was moving. Because Ukraine holds something the modern world had been quietly taking for granted. You don't need to be an empire to shake the world. You just need to sit in the kitchen and the hallway of the entire continent. To understand Ukraine like you're 5, imagine the world as a giant house. Ukraine is 2 things at once. It is the pantry and it is the front hallway. First, the pantry. Ukraine sits on one of the rarest geological treasures on Earth, Chernozem, or black soil. It is pitch black dirt, feet deep, packed with organic matter and moisture. It is so naturally fertile, you could drop a seed in the ground and almost watch it grow. Ukraine represents less than 1% of the Earth's landmass, but it produces enough food to feed 400 million people. 1/10 of all the wheat sold across the planet comes from this soil. Half of the world's sunflower oil, massive shares of corn, barley, and fertilizer. When Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea were blockaded, ships couldn't sail. When that food stops moving, it doesn't just cause a problem for Europe. A mother in Beirut, a street food cook in Nairobi, a baker in Cairo, none of them have ever visited Ukraine. Most of them have never seen the Black Sea, but all of them depend on it staying open. Ukraine isn't just an agricultural story, it's a civilization story. And then there is the second role, the hallway. If you open a map of Europe, there is a giant flat strip of land called the North European Plain. It runs from France all the way to Moscow. There are no oceans in the middle, no mountain ranges, no giant natural walls. It is a flat, open runway. For hundreds of years, Russia has looked at that hallway with fear. Napoleon marched through it. The Kaiser marched through it. Hitler marched through it. To Russia, Ukraine is the giant buffer zone, the wide hallway that keeps foreign armies far away from Moscow. To Europe, Ukraine is the shield, the barrier that keeps a massive, heavily armed neighbor from standing on its eastern doorstep. Control the hallway, and you control the security of the entire continent. Because it turns out modern peace isn't built purely on treaties and goodwill. It's built on geography. For centuries, empires fought over this dirt. The Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union. New flags? Same logic. If you control Ukraine, you control the food supply of the Middle East, the buffer of Europe, and the warm water gateway to the Mediterranean through the Black Sea. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine chose independence. It became a neutral giant sitting right in the seam between two massive power blocks, NATO on the west and Russia on the east. And for 30 years, the world pretended the seam wasn't there. Why spend trillions reinforcing supply chains or redrawing the security map of Europe for a crisis that might never happen? Europe bought cheap Russian energy, the Middle East bought cheap Ukrainian grain, and tech companies bought cheap Ukrainian neon to build smartphones.
It was cheap. It was efficient. It worked. Until the hallway caught fire. When the war started, the world rushed to build bypasses. Europe built liquefied natural gas terminals in months. The UN scrambled to negotiate grain corridors. Developing countries depleted their emergency budgets just to buy bread. The world managed to keep the food moving through alternative train tracks, river barges, and temporary deals. It bought time. And like every crisis before it, once the grain started moving again, the hard questions about how deeply exposed the world is got quietly pushed aside.
Because replacing Ukraine's agricultural output, its rare minerals, and its critical geography costs hundreds of billions of dollars. And fixing a problem that only hurts when the shooting starts is a very hard case to make to people holding everyday budgets. So the world takes the cheaper option, hoping the hallway stays quiet. The countries that rely on Ukraine the most for their daily bread are not the ones fighting over its territory. They have no armies in the conflict, no say in the peace talks, and no way to change the geography of the earth.
Ukraine has been the prize and the battleground for centuries. Someone tries to claim the pantry, someone else tries to lock the hallway, and the rest of the world, trapped on the other side of the global table, holds its breath and watches. The grain moves again. It always does. The geography doesn't.